Welcome to the NBA Drop Pick Show, powered by EV Analytics. I'm John Metler. He's Adam Scherher. Adam, how's it going today on this Tuesday, NBA Cup Action Day?
Going pretty well. Nice to have 5 games today, as opposed to a couple. So more stuff to pick from for the show.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. One thing, me and Adam are brutally honest and very transparent, and we were 0-5 last week on the 5 picks. Miles Bridges was a void on Thursday; he didn't play, but we're still 12-9 on the year, plus 2.69 units. So even though you go 0-5 and reverse swept 2 days, you're still not losing money. So, I mean, that obviously stands for something. Kind of just shows why you do trust the math and stuff. Even when it kind of go on a cold streak, it's always nice when you're still ahead. So
yeah, always nice to get off to a good start too, so that when you have the bad streaks, you're still in the black as opposed to the other direction.
Yeah, you kind of like, I feel like that also stops you from like kind of questioning your process a little bit, right? Because you're like, okay, I know the losing streaks are gonna come, I know the winning streaks, but at least we're ahead. If you start the year like that, and you're like minus 16, you're like,
yeah. If you start the year like 0-5, you're just like, even if you know that it's gonna turn around, it's automatically just like, oh, am I like not good at this? Is this bad?
So make sure you subscribe to the show here, drop us some likes, keep the show going, and we will be giving out prices. Make sure you drop in the comments. Let us know. Also, sometimes it's kind of tricky. This happening to me quite a bit. People can also check the alts. Sometimes you'll see the alts. It's not an alt for a player, but an alt, it's a different book, and you can just see a different price. So let us know if you do find a better price than what we have. Before we get rolling here, there's one player I wanted to ask you about because he's not one of the picks, but he's near the top of the prop projections page here on covers, and that is Anthony Edwards under threes made. So I'm curious why it wasn't a pick. If you want to tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think I kind of mentioned him on a previous show, but there's just been a really, really big difference in his shot selection this year compared to last year. Last year, he averaged, I actually looked it up this morning. I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was like between 6 and 7 3-point attempts per game, and he shot 35 to 36%. This year, he's averaging like 11 3-pointers per game. I think he's second, maybe third in the NBA in 3-point attempts per game. He's also shooting 43 or 44% on them. So, like, the one argument is, if he stops, like if he regresses back to last year's 3-point percentage, he may also start taking less threes. But I think it's more likely that he's taking these threes by design. He's basically said that he's taking them by design. And it's also pretty likely that he worked at improving his 3-point percentage, and that you're going to see, even if he doesn't maintain 44%, that he is still a better 3-point shooter than he was last year. So I think that, in any good projection model, you're regressing to historical averages, historical data. But when somebody has pretty noticeably made a change both in how they are playing and probably in their skill level, their underlying skill level, it's something that you want to pay a lot of attention to. And if you take last year's 36% percentage and you apply it to this year's 11 3-pointers per game, that still gives you an average of like 4 threes made. The line here is 3.5 at plus 110, and that's without accounting for the fact that he's probably better at shooting threes now. So I think it's just a spot that is going to project better than it probably is, just based on changes early in the season.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, when a player makes like a dramatic shift in something, like projection models take time to, like you're saying, like gather that data. It's historical. So I think a good example too, earlier this year, like RJ Barrett had a stretch, like when he was with the Knicks, his assist total was like 1.5, 2.5, and he was dropping like 10 dimes a game. And like the projections were like, just, you could tell they're like super confused. And even the totals at the sportsbooks, they like, we don't really know, like, is this who he is now? But like, that's a huge jump and stuff like that. And like you're saying, Anthony Edwards, it's obviously there's a huge, like, he's put a huge emphasis on just shooting more threes. It's pretty clear, right? So
yeah,
it takes time.
And it goes to something you and I have talked about too, where I'm a lot more interested in changes in like the underlying opportunities or underlying stuff as opposed to just the percentages. Like if Anthony Edwards was still taking 6 threes per game, but through the first few weeks of the season, he was shooting 60%, it would be like, okay, he's going to stop shooting 60% sooner or later, and I'm going to just be betting unders. But when he's shooting 11 of them a game, that's such a big difference in opportunities. Like you were saying with RJ Barrett, it would be one thing if RJ Barrett still is barely getting assist opportunities and he's just converting 100% of them. But RJ Barrett this year has been the number one playmaker on the team, at least when Scotty Barnes wasn't there. So it was a complete change in role. And it's a similar thing with Anthony Edwards here. You and I talked about it earlier this year with Anthony Davis as well, that it seemed like based on the preseason, at least he may start taking more threes. I actually don't know off the top of my head how that's played out, but when you're seeing, basically twice the volume on threes, that's a much different change than him shooting well.
I think, and the complete opposite to Anthony Edwards, like you're saying, is we didn't get the green check mark on it, but it would be John Collins last week under assists, where the potential assists weren't higher. He's just converting them at like an 85% clip. So like that's the complete opposite. That's what you're saying, the opposite of Anthony Edwards, and that's what you're saying. Where, I mean, we didn't get a green check mark on it, but
if basically, I think you're in general going to get really good opportunities to bet when over a few games somebody's like conversion percentage of whatever stat you're looking at is just higher than their norm. It's very, very likely that it's going to just go back to normal. You want to be really aware, though, of changes where of situations where the opportunities change, because that is typically more by design and more sustainable than just, oh, this guy got really good at shooting overnight.
Yeah. When the role changes, the minutes changes.
Yeah.
Let's get going. We'll go into the release procedure here. If you're new to the release show, Adam has 3 bets for us. We're going to tell you the game we're betting on, the prop market, the team, the player, then we'll give out the bet, and Adam will break it down for us using the numbers and prop projections that are on the Covers website from EV Analytics. They are fantastic projections, but he's just going to put a little more context to those numbers, just like he did with Anthony Edwards and why he decided not to bet on Anthony Edwards. But these ones we are betting on. So let's go. The 2 books we're using are BetMGM and 365, and Caesars actually has the next best price on a couple of these. So if you want to fire up those apps, NBA Cup Tuesday, big game. We're going Lakers, Suns, and Durant and Beal are back, by the way. They both said that. But we're going to the assist market for Lakers, Suns at BetMGM here. And then the player we're looking for is in our price there. So the player we're looking for is Jusuf Nurkic. And we're going over 1.5 assists plus 110. We don't get too many overs from Adam. So this one is Jusuf Nurkic over 1.5 assists plus 110. Adam, break this one down for us.
Yeah, I think for the most part here, it's a playing time thing. Nurkic, we have projected for 26 minutes, which I think is very fair. I think he could play more. We saw 33 minutes last game after he missed a game from injury. He had played 14 the game before that because he got hurt mid-game. I don't necessarily anticipate those guys coming back having a huge impact on Nurkic's playing time. Like, even if they go small for a little bit, it probably, or at least could have a bigger impact on Plumlee / Iguodaro, whoever they're using as the backup. So I think 26 is very reasonable, and there is the potential for more. He's obviously not a high assist guy. He has like a 7% assist percentage for the year. Having a couple of other good scorers on the floor shouldn't hurt. Obviously you get some more ISO ball with those guys out there too, but it's not like Nurkic is somebody that when Durant or Beal are out is being asked to take on a big playmaking role, and now he's going to lose that because they have the ball in their hands. It's still, going to be a low opportunity. Hopefully he converts on 2 out of like 4, potential assists. But I think the playing time looks pretty favorable here, and then getting a good price as well.
I feel like Nurkic is someone, obviously there's certain players when superstars come back in, you'd be nervous about like the usage and like their assist problem thing. I feel like Nurkic would be the opposite, where he needs like a Durant to knock down the shot. He needs like a Bradley Beal to knock down the shot, because he's not going to do anything that spectacular from like a passing standpoint. Like it literally could just be he flips it to Durant and he takes a mid-range jumper, right? So like that's kind of the way I've seen Nurkic. Also, like, he also really works in tandem with Durant in the past. That's what at least I've noticed from like watching them in games and stuff. So I think Durant being back really does help Nurkic. I do have one question for you. Someone says minus 105 playable. Do you have the break even on that?
Yeah, we have it at minus 219. So like I wouldn't actually play it to that number, but I would play. I think 105 is still playable.
Yeah. So then my next question to you was, he is kind of like boom or bust minutes wise a little bit in the Suns this year. Would you look at a 3+, or you're like, no, I'm more comfortable at 1.5 or 2.5?
I think I would probably stay at 1.5. Like, he just doesn't get that many opportunities. You're already kind of trying to run a little bit hot on conversion rate here. As far as his playing time too, like I mentioned, I think that there is room for him to play more than 26. One thing I do kind of like is, he has had the really volatile playing time, like you were saying, and it kind of also correlated with like he was playing less when Durant and Beal were healthy. But I think that was pretty coincidental. Like, we had Nurkic not really playing well, and you had quotes from like Durant saying, look, like Nurkic is going to get going. We need Nurkic to get going. I don't think this is somebody like they're going to just be phasing out of the rotation or anything now that these guys are back.
Yeah, he's also a good defender. So you're facing Anthony Davis. So from a minute standpoint, it doesn't have anything to do with the assist, but just from keeping him on the floor, you think that would help to keep him on the floor. So the first bet is Jusuf Nurkic over 1.5 assists plus 110 at BetMGM, and we'll move to the second bet here. We're going to Bet 365, and we're doing Spurs Jazz, and we're looking for an assist market. And the player we're looking for is Keyonte George. I think everyone had a little heart attack that it might be John Collins. He did it quick too. That was the worst part. Oh, yeah. He had like 2 assists in like the first 5 minutes, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, somebody tagged us on Twitter and was like, "That was quick," and I was like, "What is he referring to? There's no way John Collins has 2 assists already."
Yeah, I actually think he assisted the first bucket, and I was like, "Oh god." So the player we're looking for is Keyonte George, and our numbers there, and this is pretty much the best. It is the best price. There's not too many other spots you can go here, but it's Keyonte George under 6.5 assists, even money. If you don't have 365, DraftKings has -105, and then a lot of the other books are seeing like -130, -120. So those are by far your 2 best prices. So it's Keyonte George under 6.5 assists, even money. Adam, you want to break this one down?
Yeah, it's a good price at +100. We have him projected for 32 minutes, and in 32 minutes, getting like 5.6 assists. He does lead Utah with 9.2 potential assists per game, but that's still not a lot in 31.5 minutes. Now, you don't have Jordan Clarkson today, so you are likely to have the ball in Keyonte George's hands a little bit more, but still, like, he's not averaging that many potential assists per game. He still has to contend with Colin Sexton being out there. Obviously, Lauri Markkanen in general is just going to have the ball in his hands a lot. My biggest concern here is actually that Utah's rotation could get thinned out. No Cody Williams. He's in the G League. No Jordan Clarkson. You do have Kessler back. But Utah has typically run 10-man rotations this year. So I think 32 it's the same way that I personally projected Keyonte George here. My concern would be like if Utah just says, oh, well, we're still not going to play Patty Mills. We're not going to give, like Svi Mikhailuk minutes. And they just run like an 8.5 man rotation. And then suddenly you're getting 34, 35, 36 minutes from George, and you're probably in trouble. But based on what Utah's done this year, as far as pretty consistently having 10-man rotations, I think you do see those end of the bench pieces just step up and play at least a handful of minutes each. And then also Utah's just a bad team. It's not like they're a team that really, that cares about winning the game necessarily and is going to really condense the rotation. So I think the most likely outcome here is that you still get around 32 minutes from Keyonte George, which makes the +100 line or +100 price look good.
So you said Jordan Clarkson's out. He's obviously a good scorer. The guy who probably would get more minutes is Isaiah Collier, and kind of reference these guys. Assist stealer. That's what that guy is. So if he's playing alongside Keyonte George, that's one of those, like, I think that's a good swing for an under bet on the assist, because Jordan Clarkson will take shots and make shots, and he has no conscience, where Isaiah Collier is one of those guys who loves to make the extra pass, and he can collect dimes and stuff. And what was I going to say? I forget what the next thing I was going to say was, but that was, so I think 3 games ago, I was watching the Jazz, and Keyonte George didn't start the second half, and they started Collier beside Colin Sexton, and there was no injury. They just were frustrated with him. I don't know. They just didn't play him, but it was so weird because I think near the end of the third quarter, they brought him in and he played the last 15 minutes of the game, and they kept Colin Sexton on the bench. And I was like, what was going on there? So, I mean, that he's still a starter, he's still playing minutes, but it is kind of interesting when you're talking about like an under and outs and like all these different ways you could win. The fact that they did bench him one time, I don't know why they kept him in the last 15 minutes and they did that rotation, but at least there's kind of some frustration there between the coach and how he's playing, and just kind of adds to the bet. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And to your point on Collier, like with him playing more minutes, that does also it does put another ball handler out there. So I do like that. George does have a higher assist percentage this year when he's playing without Clarkson on the floor than when he's playing alongside Clarkson, but it's still not like it's a crazy jump from his average.
Yeah, he said good luck predicting Utah's rotations. Yeah, they've been all over the place this year.
Yeah, I think I took 3 or 4 cracks at it this morning. Really, like, going back to what I was talking about, just trying to decide, like, how many bodies do they actually play? Do they just run all these guys 36 plus? But I don't think that they will.
Yeah, there's spots early in the year I was like, why is Patty Mills on the floor? And then there's all over the place.
Well, and like they hate playing Markkanen, Collins, and Kessler all at the same time. But then last game they started them all together, and they kind of don't have bodies now with Filipowski. Filipowski also out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Do you have the break even for Keyonte?
Yeah, it is
Actually,
minus 227. So again, I wouldn't bet it that far, but you have some wiggle room.
Yeah, Dell dropped it there too. Minus 227 for Keyonte George. That's the second bet. Let's go to the third bet here. And we're going back to BetMGM, but we're staying in the Spurs Jazz game. And we're also, again, assist market. We're looking at the assist market. And we're going Chris Paul is the player we're looking for, and our price is there. So we're going Chris Paul under 8.5 assists plus 130. Big plus price here. Once again, that's Chris Paul under 8.5 assists plus 130. If you don't have BetMGM, Caesars has plus 126. That was the next best price I saw. Adam, you want to break this one down?
Yeah, it's the price again at plus 130. We actually have Paul projected for exactly 8.5 assists in 29 minutes. So, this game does have a close spread. Maybe you get the 30 or 31 minute Chris Paul game, but on average, playing about 29 minutes per game this year. You do have a San Antonio team that's getting healthier. Still no Devin Vassell today, but Keldon Johnson is back. Wemby came back last game. So there are ways for those minutes to kind of get limited. Trey Jones also played the most minutes last game that he's played all season. He played a few minutes alongside Chris Paul. So there are outs to, for one reason or another, Chris Paul just kind of losing a minute here or there. I think we actually had Trey Jones close the first half over Chris Paul last game. If I remember correctly, that's just going from memory. But either way, there are, ways for him to lose outs, but even projected for 29 minutes, which is about his season average, it puts him at 8.5 assists. Walker Kessler being back for Utah is nice too. Just, gives you some rim protection, makes that defense better. So that is a small benefit here as well.
Someone said 9.5 minus 154. Do you have the break even on the 9.5?
I do not. I don't think.
Usually usually when you're like, if you have an edge on the under, like if it's 8.5, so it's 8.5 plus 130 and he has 8.5, usually the plus price does have the bigger EV. The 9.5 minus 154 will obviously still have an edge because, as if you have an edge at this number, you have an edge at this number as well. One's just usually bigger than the others. Well, there's a 9.5 minus 132 at FanDuel. That might be closer.
Yeah. 9.5, 132 looks good. We have it at minus 231.
FanDuel has plus 102 for 9.5. I feel like we didn't see that. Are you sure it's not minus 132? Someone else said minus 132. Anyways, we're talking about Walker Kessler back for rim protection. This is the third time they faced Wemby in I'm pretty short, and we're only 18 games into the season. So when you're talking about seeing a guy multiple times and having the scout, yeah, it's minus 132, 9.5. We're talking about having a scout. A lot of Chris Paul's assists come to doing nothing that spectacular against Wemby. Wemby finishes off the shot. So when you have John, like you said last game, they started John Collins, Walker Kessler, and Lauri Markkanen. That's a lot of size. And I mean, Wemby shouldn't be surprising them with what he's doing. It's the third time they're facing him. So I feel like that's kind of plays in that too. I bet the Jazz on the spread today too. So plus 2.5. So I was kind of looking at that as well. So those are the three bets. Adam, you want to let the people know where they can find your work, where they can get more information from you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. Also, the Endgame Syndicate YouTube channel. I will be doing an NBA DFS breakdown over there at 4:45 today and most days during the week, looking at my tournament exposures and how I'm attacking DFS. So if you play DFS, check that out.
So just as a reminder, there will be no show on Thursday because we have this thing called football being played all day for American Thanksgiving. So there's no NBA games on Thursday. So we will be back on Tuesday next week at 10:30 a.m. More NBA Cup action. Hopefully we can get a sweep here. Last week was not great. Even a 2-1. We got 3+ money prices. So a 2-1 would also be nice for the units as well. The bets are Jusuf Nurkic over assists, Keyonte George under assists, Chris Paul under assists. This concludes the NBA Prop Pick Show powered by EV Analytics. Enjoy your NBA Cup action. Del, play the song.